Welcome back in, everybody. It is a privilege to have you on board Pro Football Plus. We are here tonight with Youssef and Shane. We're all up and down the East Coast. As always, it's a privilege to have you, our audience, on board. We're NFL heavy. We'll cover a couple of other things tonight. Let's get rocking and rolling. First of all, the AFC South. I think this is our last division that we haven't covered. We haven't predicted their records yet, so we're going to predict these. I already know where I wanted to go on two of these teams. Two I struggled with a little bit, so I'm eager to see where both of y'all went. Shane leading off as always. Records for the AFC South.
Okay, so I'm going top to bottom. I imagine everybody's probably going to be pretty similar on this. I have the Texans going 12-5. I think they had a great year last year. I expect with more offensive weapons that offense is only going to get better. Defense is solid. DeMarco Ryan, give him another year, having the whole team together. I think they'll still be the solid factor out of the South. I think the Colts are going to be at 7-10. They get their quarterback back. There's still some weaknesses on that team. Do they have the ability to turn it around? Yeah, they could be one of the surprises on my end. And then I have the Titans at 5-12. I just don't see it out of them. I think they're going to have a quarterback that's going to press. I think they're going to start to build offense, but I don't think this is the year where they can put it all together. And then I have the Jaguars at 9-8. So I think they're actually going to come in at second, but I think that they have a chance where they could drop very quickly. If they don't pick up and their offense doesn't make plays, or if he gets beaten around like he has the last couple of years, I think the Jaguars could go all the way to a losing record, but I have them sitting. So Texans, Jaguars, Colts, and then Titans coming in last.
Shane, I have three teams almost identical to you, almost, and one team where I've got a little bit of a difference, and I'm not even sure what I feel about that team. So, Youssef, where are you at on the four teams here, man?
Go top to bottom as well. I got the Texans at 11-6. I know they got some new weapons, but I kind of feel like now there's some tape on Stroud and the crew, so I don't think they'll be steamrolling as much as they were last year. So I think it'll be a little bit of a variance there. So I'm at 11-6. I got the Colts at 9-8. In my mind, there's still second best team out there, even if Richardson wasn't healthy. It can't have enough to do you throughout the course of the season. I got the Titans and the Jaguars tied for third, I guess, at 8-9. I'm not super thrilled with either one of these teams. I kind of feel like they're going in a different direction. I guess what they should have done, the Titans should have done when they had a Vader back there, and what the Jaguars should have done with Peterson coaching and adding all of this money to this team and all of this talent. So they're going in a different direction. I could be wrong about this, but I'm probably sure they're going to be somewhere to the third or last. I don't see them really competing in this division. I could be wrong, but it's kind of hard to see right now.
All right, fair enough. And apologies to the audience, apologies to you, Youssef. For some reason, I should have tested this before, but there's you're sounding a little bit like Darth Vader. I don't know if it's the mic or the headset, so I'm sorry. I'll jabber for a second. We'll see if you get a second to kind of figure it out. We'll keep on moving, but I could understand what you were saying. It just sounds like Darth Vader. So for me, I've got the Texans at 11-6. So I've got them winning the division. It wouldn't surprise me if they had a better record than that, up in the 12 or 13 win category. But I've got them at 11-6 and winning the division. I don't really have anybody else just sitting there kind of crushing the Texans right now. I feel like they're the team to beat here, and I feel like over the next couple of seasons, I really feel like the sky is the limit for Houston. And I maybe they take a little bitty half step back just from, sophomore year type progression, but I'm not even sure I expect that. I just expect this to be a good team this year, pretty much all the way through. Jaguars 9-8. Could they do better? Yeah. Could they do worse? Yes. Jaguars, I think, have a very high-low valley mountain experience here in front of them. So I just went with 9-8. The Colts were the one team I was different on, Shane. So I've got them at 9-8. A lot of that is based on I think Shane Steichen seems to be the real deal. He seems to know what he's doing. But a lot of that is also assuming that Anthony Richardson comes back healthy and continues to play well and kind of develop. So that's a good bit of ifing there, but I've got the Colts at 9-8. Not the worst division in the world to play in. I do think they've got a chance, but 9-8 might be their ceiling too, so I might be a little optimistic on them. And then the Titans I've got at 5-12. The Titans are good enough, I think, to kind of compete this year in most of their games. But man, I'm just not sure whether they've got any advantages or where they're going to win. I mean, it kind of looks like they're pushing this, snowball up a mountain almost every single week. So I think they're going to be scratching for wins. But I do think they've got enough to pull out maybe 5 victories this year. Youssef, you want to go ahead and test out the mic again while we're in between topics?
I'm your father, Luke. Hey, brother.
It's still Darth Vadering. So anyway, I can understand you, but it is Darth Vader, and I don't know why. So feel free.
No.
All right, we'll work on through it. Next topic for the night. If you are the Houston Texans GM, what position group are you most hoping the coaches can scheme or cover for? I found about 3 or 4 different groups here, but none of them I thought were brutal. This is a fairly well-balanced roster, so I had to scratch a little bit here. Shane, where are you at on this particular position group?
I think you're right, Ben. There's a couple of different ways you can go on this one, but I actually thought with a solid defense, one thing that pops out to me is linebacker. They're basically changing out the 3 starters from last year. Not that they don't have talented players. I mean, they return a couple of guys that led their significant teams in tackles, but when you're changing that entire staff out, it definitely helps to have your head coach and your defensive coordinator both be former linebackers to be able to get everybody back up to speed. But that was the one thing that jumped out to me. I mean, I don't think they have a serious weakness, but if I was trying to nitpick, that would have been the way that I was looking.
So that's kind of the way I am. We've seen several teams, good teams, who did have one obvious fatal flaw, right, that could catch them. When I look at this Texans roster, I'm like, well, there's 3 or 4 spots that I could kind of improve, but I'm not sure that they're as drastic as what we've seen on other teams. Youssef, where are you at on this?
Not sure I'll add a whole lot to that. I think Stroud is going to be an MVP candidate. They got an awesome defense. 3 of the best wide receivers in the game right now. I think the secondary is probably where I probably would, if I want to nitpick, I probably would do it there. We're not sure if, Derek Stingley Jr. is a shutdown corner. No question about that. Kind of reminds me of Deion that he could command the entire whole side of that field. That's a good thing. If he's not healthy, though, then we have a severe challenge, but it can be a season save or it can be a collapse. I love him to get Stephon Gilmore. I think that'll help kind of balance that and kind of keep the rookies like Lassiter and guys like Okuda and Henderson to have to rely on them to do what they haven't been able to do in almost 5 years now. Well, some of them on the 3rd team in 5 years. So I think the secondary is probably the issue here. The rookies can potentially ball out and surprise everybody. If it does, that's really a happy coincidence. It'd be good for the team, but it's kind of hard to put all your eggs in that one basket. So if I'm going to say that, and running a base 4-2-5-2, I'm probably going to say, you know what, the secondary might be the thing to take advantage of. If there is anything to take advantage of, it'd be the secondary.
Yes, I'm right there. By the way, you sound great now. So I don't know. Sorry about the technical interaction, but yeah, you sound back to our old Youssef now. So I'm right there with both of y'all. I was linebacker, safety were both kind of a little bit soft areas for me. I'm actually going to go in a different area just because just to add to it. So defensive tackle and then interior offensive line. So basically, in those deep trenches, I don't see where the Texans can't kind of even. They're not inspiring me. I'll put it that way. No, it may not matter. The offense is so good. Y'all mentioned it. Stroud, the weapons to throw to. It might not matter that the offensive line isn't actually dominant. It's a little less than league average, so that bothers me just a little bit. Defensive side of the football, they're going to be really good. But the defensive tackle rotation, they kind of use 4 or 5 different guys and just give them about 300, 400 snaps each. There's not really one guy in there dominating. So that concerns me a little bit too. Is that going to turn into some kind of a weakness where teams can push up the middle? Not overly concerned about that because, again, they're pretty decent defensive tackles in there. So it's not like they're just going to get shoved around. But, again, trenches, it's not like when you're going up in the playoffs that they're able to push other people around on the defensive line or on the interior offensive line. We'll see if that matters. It may not. Houston may be so good that it just doesn't matter. But that's where I went with that. Next topic tonight, still GM view. If you were the Cowboys GM, how would you plan for the next 3 to 5 years? We can go a million different directions here, and there's a lot of lightning rod conversations we could have here. We won't spend a long time on it, though. 3 moves can be specific. I would prefer specific, but what's 3 things you would do kind of immediately over the next few months or next off season that would take effect over the next 3 to 5 years? Shane.
So I thought there were 4 main things that pop into my head if I'm running the Cowboys. Number one, is McCarty going to be my coach going forward? So in my mind, I think he's gone. I think there's coaches that are going to be coming up in the carousel that they'll make a run at. I think the next important question is Dak. Is he going to be my quarterback of the future and the present? I like him in that offense. I think he's proven that, when it gets to the playoffs, it's hard for him to be the only one that's carrying salt for them. So I would run with him. The number one that I think is most important actually for them is they need to find out if Micah Parsons is just going to run to Pittsburgh or Philadelphia when his contract's up. If they can find that answer out and they'll find out that he can stay and wants to be a Cowboy, I think that's the most important decision for them. Defensively, he controls that offense, controls the other team's offense, and lets those DBs play as well as they have the last couple of years. And then the other thing that I think is going to be really important this year is find a real running back. Is Ezekiel Elliott going to come back and help you? You've let other running backs that have done well transfer out. So, I think the Cowboys are one of those teams that always have questions. You're always going to have questions when Jerry Jones is your owner because he's going to say things in the media that's going to make you wonder if you have a job the next day. So those would be the first 4 that I would take care of GM.
Listen, this doesn't apply to my next 3 to 5 years, but that running back thing bothered me for this season. I mean, why not spend on Derrick Henry and Joe Mixon? I didn't really understand why the Bengals let Mixon go, but bring both of those guys in here and at least have some heavy horses in there for Prescott to hand the ball off to. I don't understand why they didn't do that for the life of me.
The Texans are your team right in Texas is super happy that Mixon got away because they're going to give him the ball.
They are, because he's one of those kind of old-fashioned workhorse backs. I mean, he's not going to dominate, in lots of weeks necessarily, but he's just a good old-fashioned running back. Downhill, you hand the ball to him, he's going to get some yardage. You keep the offense moving. I don't understand why the Cowboys didn't go after him more hard than they did. So, all right, Yusef, 3 to 5 years, Cowboys, man, you're in charge. What's happening?
All righty. Well,
you can't shut them down either, by the way. You can't.
I can't move them to a different country. I can't move them to water. No. Okay. Well, since I can't relocate them and extradite them out of the country, I think honestly speaking, though, just all NFC East bias aside, Jerry's an incredible drafter. I would love for him to get out of his own way. That would make, they're competitive anyway, but it's just fodder for us. It's like you're killing this team. It's been almost 30 years. As long as I've been married, you've been ineffective down the stretch when it matters. And it's like that's a long time. It's like you take parts out, bring players and coaches in, and the only thing that stays is you. That should tell you something. But I think what we're going to have to do at this point is bite the bullet and accept the fact that even though this is the star, this is Big D, the so-called America's team, which I've even challenged that assessment of them now. This is a team that's on the verge of having to regroup. So I'm not sure you give Dak Prescott $60 million because he's going to be in line for that once Jordan Love and Tua get their money. So you can't give him that. I will let him play out this last year. And you either go into the draft and find somebody else or trade for somebody. Maybe trade with Miami for Tua, but I don't think it's going to be a great idea. But you got to do something else beside that. I will go ahead and probably now CeeDee Lamb. He's a kind of a generational wide receiver. You got to take care of that. But if you're a regrouping team, that you want to have that kind of a contract and maybe a disgruntled wide receiver on there, I would take the chance and I would give CeeDee Lamb his money. And if I could, I would try to franchise Micah Parsons. But their defense right now, it's not a lot of long-term fits going on out there. I would think that guys like Zach Martin and DeMarcus Lawrence, Odigizua, those guys are not going to be around. You got to feel the sting and let Ferguson let those guys go. It's going to eventually happen, and you'll be starting from scratch. And of course, like Shane said about the running back help, I mean, Elliott or Dowdle really aren't the answer, and you kind of saw that over time. It's like you got to do something else. So you find yourself at different positions having to go into the draft and retool and repiece. I would just, if I was them, I would do all of those things and just accept the fact that, you know what, you guys are starting from scratch a little bit. Maybe it's not a full rebuild, but for the most part, that's what you're doing. You're going to do it at quarterback. You're doing it at running back. You're going to do it at the other wide receiver spots. You're doing it on defense, very more than likely, and you're definitely doing it on the O-line too. And you're doing it at linebacker as well. So you're almost rebuilding everywhere. You might as well just go ahead and just accept it and then try to build something strong and go forward into the future, hopefully without Jerry Jones talking you into the grave. But, just accept the rebuild, so.
Yeah, the Jerry Jones problem is a real problem, but I'm not against the Cowboys. I actually respect a lot of what they've done, but they haven't won Super Bowls in 30 years, and they really haven't been that close. So with that in mind, I'm going to let Dak Prescott go. It's going to be my number one thing. And listen, I respect Prescott. I like the work he does. He's a heck of a quarterback. I'm not trying to slight him, but I don't like him $60 million a year good. I mean, we're already not winning Super Bowls with him on a rookie contract and then with him on, $40, $50 million a year. I'm struggling to see how we're going to win Super Bowls with him at 60. I just am. So I'm going to let him go as tough as that may be, because it may be 2 or 3 years before we get our next good quarterback, right? That's not quick and easy, right? But I'm going to be working at it. I'm going to be looking at, Shedeur Sanders. I'm going to be looking at Carson Beck. If I don't land them, I'll be looking at next year's group, So that's where I really want to go. I want to get the young quarterback in. I don't want to pay a guy $60 million a year who's not top 4, top 5 quarterback. And as much as I like Prescott, I don't have him in my top 4, top 5. So that's what I'm going to do, even though that's tough. After that, I'm going to re-sign Micah Parsons. I love Micah Parsons. And I don't, listen, he's going to be expensive, but he's not going to be $60 million a year expensive. I can sign him to a 4 or 5 year deal. I can probably catch him at 30, 35 a year. I don't know exactly, but it's going to be a whole heck of a lot less money than what I'll be paying Prescott. And then CeeDee Lamb, I'm going to go ahead and draft his potential replacement. If I can hook up a deal with CeeDee Lamb and keep him happy, great. If not, I may just do franchise and trade, and see what I can get out of him, right? So that's going to be my approach with CeeDee Lamb. I really want to keep him for my next quarterback, whoever that is. But if he's not going to be happy, then let's just go ahead and work out a deal somewhere else. Let's trade you away for a second-round pick or whatever I can get. I'll be more than happy to do that, and we'll move on. This isn't a bad team. It's a good team. I just don't see Super Bowls for this team. So, if I'm in Dallas, I want to go after Super Bowls. I know there's risk, but that's the way I am. So let's do it. Off the NFL now, switching to the Olympics. We're in our stock investment scenario. Shane, I'm sorry, man, you can't catch a break. Week after week, you won the title last year. You're just cursed this time around. So Shane's still in the red, but he can bet 500. Youssef at 255. And again, my luck just won't quit this go around. So any Olympic team from Thursday, July 25 through Monday, July 29, you can invest $500 whether you got that money or not. So any Olympic team from the United States, somewhere else, it can be one person, one team, however you want to invest. If they medal, you get that multiplication kicking in. If they don't medal, you lose whatever it was that you invested in. So let's see how the guys approached it. Shane, you're up.
So I tried to figure out, like you said, because it's how am I going to get medals here? So I didn't want to go crazy and pick like a swimming team where maybe I would get like 7 medals out of that deal or something like that. So I went with the rugby sevens. They start this beginning week, and I picked Argentina. So if they get 1 gold medal out of that, that'll get me a win. And my bet is I'll go 140 just to pull me back out of the zero.
All right. Argentina rugby. I assume they're the favorite. I'm not up on my rugby. I'm just curious.
They're pretty good. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
It wasn't a huge reach for me in that sport. So.
All right. I love it. Youssef, where are you going on our Olympic trials here?
Despite Shane's comment, I'm going with the USA swimming team. I'm gonna put 100 down on this, and I had to do it because I saw rugby. I thought about it. Some other sports, I'm like, yeah, I'm not even watching this stuff. So I'm gonna go with the USA swimming team, the ladies, and Katie Ledecky. I mean, won one gold in her rookie debut at 15 years old. She could be the first woman swimmer in the history to win the same event 4 consecutive Olympics. So I'm going for to break some records here. On the guy's side, Bobby Fink is 2 world records under his belt, 7 best in the world. I'm kind of just going on their credibility and just hoping I don't lose $100 because I can't afford to lose $100. I'm kind of on a budget, but I'm gonna go ahead and put it all down with the USA swimming team, specifically the ladies. I think Ledecky is going for it. I think it's a big goal. It's not going to be an easy one, but I think she got this one. So I'm hoping to hear that I'm $100 with you because I need some cash.
I'm going to totally stereotype here. Katie Ledecky looks like your next door neighbor who works at the local library. All right, she does not look like an Olympian who would cut your heart out because she's so uber talented and works her butt off. I mean, sure. But she's been doing this for a long time and she's amazing at it. Yes, unbelievable, really unbelievable. All right, so I got to read this because I'm not up on this right here. I am picking the Olympic canoeing slalom K1.
What?
Australia's Jessica Fox. She is a -125 favorite. I'm not up on this sport. I just went and looked it up. So I'm betting Jessica Fox here. And I'm just going to say the heck with it. She's the heavy favorite there in that.
Watch you win, Sue. Watch.
Yes. That's all I did. I just spent about 5 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and bet a good 500 on this because she does seem like the heavy favorite. So
you're going to have 2,000 next week. This is
yes. All right. We're going to run this through the second show in August, and then that's when this contest cuts off. And we got, by the way, for our viewing audience, come the week right before the NFL starts, we're going to do about 5 or 6 games. I mean, just NFL, one right after the other. We're going to predict NFL games for that 1 week. That's basically all we're going to do. We're just going to boom, hit it. So when the NFL finally gets here, that's taken forever. We've had to do an entire off season of just kind of different NFL stuff with different content. When the NFL gets here, we are going to be NFL fat. I mean, we are going to be loaded up on NFL, starting with that week right before the games start. We're just going to pick 6 games and get running with it, and we are going to eat nothing but NFL for the entire show. So I can't wait. It is coming, everybody. Just keep sticking with us. So anyway, that's our stock investments that we're doing this week. Next, I'm going to come back to to this question, y'all. We're going to go ahead and skip ahead to the NFL history question. If you could go back in NFL history, any season, attend every game in person for one team, home and away, playoffs, what would you pick? And this can go all the way back, obviously, even before the Super Bowl time. Any team you want. Shane, which team you picking?
So it's kind of kismet that you mentioned before the Super Bowl, Ben. So when we did this for any sports team, I picked a baseball team that I got a chance to see those games. For this, I went with the 1966 Packers. Get to see the first Super Bowl champ, get to see Lombardi coaching, a team full of Hall of Famers, and just to see what football was like back then. I think that would be super interesting to get a chance to see. And the Packers, just all the stories you hear about Lombardi and some of those other players, I think it'd be great to see that. Also, it was a heck of a game for Super Bowl too. So getting to see them play the whole season. I am losing some games because that's old NFL, so it's not an 18-game schedule, but
right. Who cares? I see. I agree with you. And listen, there's hundreds of candidates we would love to see. Obviously, I would love to see the efficiency that those teams operated with, especially on offense, because they didn't run a complicated offense, obviously, but it was left, right, run, right. They were so efficient with what they did. I would actually love to just go back and see that live and in person and watch them operate that, because most of the defenses knew what was coming, basically, but they just couldn't stop it. The Packers were so efficient at it, so talented at it. I would love to see that as well. Youssef, are you picking the Giants from some team long ago, or are you going with some other team, man?
I am going to pick the Giants from some time ago, but not for the homer reason that you guys might be thinking. Picking the 86 Giants. To be fair, that was the only time that they were ever as dominant as they were. They lost 2 games, one to the Cowboys, one to the Seahawks, and those are slight edges. I think by no more than 3 points for both of those games.
How did they lose to the Seahawks that year, man?
I can't imagine. But the reason why I missed so much of it, and I want to go back and catch it, is it did culminate into a Super Bowl against the Broncos. But they were during probably one of the roughest times of my life. I was dealing with tragedy. I was dealing with some inner turmoil, and my life was pretty much a wreck. So I missed a lot of the games, and I feel like, I ain't gonna sit here and try to say, you know what, that sports improves your life and sports can solve life problems. But I probably could have learned a lot from watching this team. I mean, because even though had a 14-2 record, they did it from defense. They gutted it out. They had perseverance and teamwork, and they got stronger and more dominant as the season went along. I probably could have learned something from a comeback story like that, because the years before that, they were looking hard. They weren't looking that great. So this was a very, very special year. As a matter of fact, we haven't even seen a record or dimension like that since, even with the Super Bowl, we haven't seen anything like it since then. That was probably one shining light in the entire franchise history, and I didn't get a chance to see it all because all I was dealing with. So for me, I'm like, I would have loved to have seen the whole season, kind of catch some of that lightning in the bottle, see what it looks like to fight until the end and never quit, and just things I probably could have used in my personal at the time. So.
No, I love it. Plus, they had that awesome '80s uniform that's better than the one they currently use. So,
oh yeah, bring it
back.
Bring it back.
No, listen, people who don't like sports don't get it, but sports makes my life better. Sometimes, even when life is good, sometimes when life is sucky, I have 4 or 5 things that I draw from, and sports is one of them. So, for many different reasons, sports makes my life better, more enjoyable. So I like that. The '86 Giants. I went with the 1968 Jets team that actually won the Super Bowl. So this was back in the AFL versus NFL days, right? And we got, I think, Super Bowl III, I think that is, if I'm remembering right. But so I get to watch Joe Namath from one week to the next. They weren't a dominant team that year. They were a very good team, but they weren't dominant. So I think they lost maybe 4 games, something like that. But for them to come through and just getting to see the characters in that old AFL kind of side of the schedule that they were playing still, and then getting to match up there against the favored Colts in the Super Bowl and get to watch that. Plus, I think they played the Raiders, which was pretty cool matchup in the playoffs that year. Just one playoff game that year, so that was a really cool matchup as well. Kind of that pre-'70s Raider version of team, right before the Raiders themselves took off. So that I would have loved that. So the 1968 Jets is the one that I picked to go back and see. But man, this was tough. Boy, the deeper I dug, the more tough it got, because man, there's so many teams I would just love to go back and see on the NFL side. All right, let's go to the Beat the Heat question. We're reaching back to our childhoods here. I think all 3 of us come from kind of a certain era, so I think our answers are going to be very similar here. But I want to know how you beat the Heat when you were a kid. What you did, what tricks you used, what really made you different, or maybe you just had to deal with it. So, Shane, where were you at as a kid on beating the Heat, man?
I mean, so first of all, I know Yus is from New York as well, starting off, but where I am, the heat is not as bad as it is for anyone in the South Carolina's region. So I started off with that, understanding that I didn't have it that bad. But in my area, there's a ton of lakes, a ton of rivers, so safety be damned. But a lot of kids, certainly myself, would jump off bridges. There's a spot not far from where I am. It was an oxbow. It was basically just a cliff jump where you didn't know what could possibly be in the water, and that was part of some of the thing. And then close to where I live now is a spot called the Flume, which is known in my area for that, but that's kind of decreased because they have had some tragedies there as water has increased. But that was, a lot of times it was safety be damned. You get a couple of people, you drive to a spot, you jump in the water, get as cool as you could, and then do whatever else you had to do. I know, especially like after football practice, 2-a-days in the heat in August, that would be something we would always try to cool off as quick as we could.
I miss not getting to have played a lot of competitive sports as a teenager, but I don't miss the fact that I never had to do 2-a-days in August. I don't miss that. Gosh. All right. Well, the semi-dangerous Shane with his childhood, teenage years, lakes,
Can't touch
flumes,
that.
and bridges.
Not all. He is the
All
winner.
right, Yusef.
It was hot in those days. I mean, we had 4 seasons, but the summers were sticky hot. I'm thinking your clothes. I mean, you had to pull your clothes off of you. It's not. It was that serious, that hot and that humid. So we did what all the kids in the neighborhood were doing: turn the fire hydrant on with a big wrench, crank that bad boy up to max, and stay soaked. That was the plan. Maybe buy $2 or $3 worth of Italian ices. Sugar and heat is probably not a good idea in hindsight, but at the time, at the time it seemed to work. But that was it, man. Crank the fire hydrant up. If we ever couldn't do that for some reason, didn't have a wrench, whatever it was the most miserable day in history. That didn't happen. So the fire hydrant had to be on. It was the best way we had to cool down because nothing else was working. So
No, listen, when it's hot enough, water is the key. Absolutely. Now, I don't have a water history in my childhood, but y'all are both hitting on it. Water is the key for summer, man. Go enjoy the summer, get outdoors, but make sure water's somewhere, whether it's your pool, your lake, your creek, your fire hydrant, whatever, man. Hook it up. So that really is the key. We didn't have water where I was. Like there wasn't, fire hydrants or pools or anything like that. I couldn't get out and go do that. So basically, I just sucked it up and dealt with it. But now, when Mom would let us in the house about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, she'd let us back in the house, and we just get right in front of that window unit air conditioner and just let it blast us in the face for a few minutes. All right, that was the number one way to beat the heat, was just run back inside for a few minutes and beat it. But listen, honestly, we just kind of sucked it up. All right, so we would go out there and play baseball, then go sit in the heat for a few minutes. Sit in the shade for a few minutes. Go back out there for a few innings, go sit in the shade for a few minutes. And that was it, And listen, honestly, down here in South Carolina, it wasn't as hot back then as it is now. It's actually hotter both in temperature and in humidity now than it was when I was growing up as a kid in, say, the late 80s and early 90s. But boy, it was still hot. So, but honestly, we love sports so much, we just kind of dealt with it. Again, it wasn't quite as hot as it is now, but we love sports so much, we just dealt with it. So, all right, that was our beat the heat moment from when we were kids. Let's do our final 60, and then we're done. Shane.
So for my final 60 this week, we've hit on quite a few documentaries, Netflix, things like that. I'd kind of let it go for a little bit and didn't take a chance to look at it, but I recently caught up on Hard Knocks, the offseason with the Giants. So as Yusuf is showing off everything on that side. And what I thought was funny is you think about what we do on this every Tuesday is talk about sports and who we would play and who we should get rid of and things like that. And the number one thing you see out of that, I could be editing, and obviously, people are crunching the numbers behind the scenes and doing things, but literally almost every conversation that happens in that show is the GM asking somebody else, like, do we play Saquon for this? Do we gonna make this move? So really, sports, no matter how far up you get, it's still a bunch of people sitting around talking about who's the best athlete and where you should put them and how you should run them. So that was my 60.
Yeah, no, love it, man. I haven't seen the Hard Knocks Giants version yet. I may it sometime when they put it back out. I just haven't had a chance to right now. So, no, love it. Go check it out, everybody. Yusef.
All right, mine was a little bit more sobering. We lived in this house for 8+ years, 13 years in South Carolina altogether. Storm Central, never a power outage. Great weather conditions last sunny days, blue skies, all the power went out. And what I was shocked by was my reaction to it. I didn't realize how reliant I was to being connected to the outside. It's kind of sobering because this can potentially happen on a larger scale, and we're kind of seeing that happen around us right now. It makes you wonder if you're learning from history. I was part of the second of 4 biggest Big Apple blackouts in New York. Traumatizing. Candles and lighters wasn't getting the job done. We didn't feel safe. 25 hours of widespread chaos. Lootings, fire, crime, all the lights out in the entire city. Time magazine called it the night of terror, and that was aptly put. The largest city in the world was not ready for a major emergency. So it took months for us to get comfortable being on a train, a bus, a ferry, driving on one of the many bridges, wondering if we're ready if a blackout like that happens at an inconvenient time. It just kind of made me just think, you know what? We're not, we get real comfortable with all of the conveniences and all of the luxuries and stuff. It's like a lot of people don't even have that in many parts of the world. We just and we get kind of miffed if we don't have access to the internet, or we can't play our game on our phone, or the TV's not working, or we don't have internet. We could stand to be a lot more grateful. So that was kind of a eye-opening moment for us, for me anyways, specifically.
No, absolutely. And that's something really serious, because you're right. A lot of people in the world don't even have what we got in the first place, but we get used to it. So when the power does kind of have a hit like that, it's rough strokes, especially when you've got a lot of people packed into a square footage area. That's when it's really, really rough. You just have so many people right in one area. That's brutal. I'm going to take that op to brag on my dad a little bit. He's gone now, rest in peace. But I'm going to brag on him. Back in the day when we were kids, nobody was better than my dad when it came to power outage time, especially in the winter. So a lot of times the power would just go out in the winter because of cold or maybe ice. Boy, he would bring out the Coleman lantern, the Coleman cook stove, and boy, we would have heat and we would have light and we would eat well. And he would read books to us, and man, we just have a great time there for one night. We didn't want to do that all the time, but for one night, man, we were warm, we were eating good. It was pretty awesome, and we just did things different for one night. So props to my dad back in the '90s for being awesome. I'm not that awesome. I own neither a Coleman lantern or a Coleman stove. Learned very much. All right, my final 60 here is a book, The Trading Game. I finally finished reading it. I bought it about a month ago. I'm kind of a slow reader. So this is by Gary Stevenson. It's called The Trading Game. I'm going to give this book a B. It's a very good book, very easy to read. I told y'all before, I don't like hard to read books where they use too many big words and they get all convoluted with sentence structure and stuff like that. I really do not enjoy that. Easy to read book. So I really enjoyed it. There's no pictures. So for people like me who like pictures, there's none of that, unfortunately. But basically, this book is about a trader, a guy who traded in England, still just within the past decade. So he was on the foreign exchange desk in England for Citigroup, and I love that kind of stuff. I love the idea of the trading game, and he was part of that on a whopping huge level for Citigroup. Did it for several years, was very successful at it. Very smart guy. He's actually got a YouTube channel now called Gary's Economics, which does pretty well. He's a really smart guy. Doesn't mean he's right on everything, but really smart guy. So I enjoyed the book. There's a lot of F-bombs in here from start to finish. So not for your kids. Don't let them, browse through the book. But I really enjoyed it. He had some interesting stories. I liked some of his ideas that he was presenting about both economics and trading. He did foreign exchange, currency, that kind of thing for the Sturt desk there in England. So I enjoyed that. The last 100 pages of the book are a little bit more personal, a little bit, I don't know, darker, you might say. Depressing is probably the best word for it, but still good book. It's called The Trading Game. I've got the hardback edition because they had a gift card, but you can probably get it used paperback for $8 or $9, I'm sure, on Amazon if you want to read it. So by all means, go check that out. All right, anything else before we're done, guys?
Oh, awesome show, man. This is fun.
All right, thank you both for showing up. As always, thank you everybody for listening. Have a great week. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.